Hey, what's up YouTube? Welcome to this new time lapse of EU4. Again, 1.28.3, the latest patch as of the 25th of February 2019. Russia run, guys. I've done multiple of those. I have like multiple series and time lapses on YouTube, but I want to do something different. I didn't play Russia, well, I did play Russia, but not on YouTube since they added the corruption for territories. And Russia is the highest number of states if you count the last age. We're missing 10 years still from technology. I'm just not gonna finish a run because at this point we beat up the Ottomans, and besides the Ottomans, if we look in terms of military, there's nobody left really. Like, if we can beat the Ottomans, we can beat everybody, so whatever. No point. But we're gonna do the time lapse as to what we did. I mean, we can show the time lapse here, but there's nothing really interesting. Start is Muscovy, obviously. Start is very basic. So one thing that you might want to do always when you start, well, you set up your rivals and all that, hire infantry across the board. You need your full force limit to get your claims on Novgorod. So don't go and get the if you do with your states, the Cossack will give you an extra 15% force limit, but you're not going to have enough manpower to hire that. So don't do that yet until you have your missions for Novgorod. I didn't use it the whole game, but it might be useful against stuff like the Ottomans or whatnot. You will be using all your manpower to hire the unit, but it's fine. Your subjects, if you deal with the war properly, your subjects can deal with it on their own, and you might just have to fight 1 or 2 wars. But yeah, because you have 5 vassals, it's like about 15,000-20,000 just from vassals. They'll fuck up a bit. Novgorod might beat a few of them, but that's fine. Eventually they'll get somewhere, you can wipe what's left, and then the subjects will take care of everything else. So yeah, you might want to go to Ryazan, check. Lithuania might guarantee it, the Great Horde might guarantee it, the Great Horde might attack it on the 11th of November. In this run, Poland didn't take the PU, so Lithuanians guarantee stayed there, but if Poland takes the PU, then Lithuanians guarantee goes away because they can't guarantee anymore. But yeah, the reason for this is you need either Ryazan or Smolensk. Smolensk might be harder to get depending on the alliances in Poland. So, or in my case, Lithuania was alone, but they were allied to Poland and Denmark with Sweden and Norway. As you'll see, Denmark will inherit Sweden in 1520. So, it was a bit annoying to go to Lithuania. Eventually, it'll blow up, so we'll be able to get there. But you need either Smolensk or Ryazan, and then annex your subjects to form Russia at Tech 10. And forming Russia is the most important thing. It turns you from a duchy to an empire, which is 10 states, and then you get an extra 5 from being a tsardom. So, yeah. So, but here we'll do the basics. Attack Novgorod. I always take this part to prevent, because Sweden or Norway might end up being claims here, and then Denmark will attack for it. So, by not having a border, they won't be able to do that, or even if they do that, they're just not going to take land, so we're good here. So this is what I'm going to do here. The other option would be to take the whole state of Novgorod, because you have 1 extra state left. When you start as Muscovy, you can add 1 state. So taking the whole state of Novgorod, which is the biggest, might be an option, but I prefer doing this so I don't have to fight Denmark if I don't have to. In terms of who we took this after. Yeah, the way we did this is, in our case, Tver allied Ryazan, so we attacked Tver, took all of Tver, but took this state. We won the province of Ryazan, as I explained, but this is the whole state, so we took the whole state. We already stated this, because I think Kolomna is in that state. I'm not sure which one, but it's already stated. In terms of who we are going to annex first, always go for Yaroslav Rostov. For the reason that Beluzero, Psov, and Perm are not stated yet. So go by your states. Rostov and Yaroslav is already stated, so you're not going to add another territory. Eventually what I'm going to do is, you'll see, like by example, we gave Luki to Psov because that's an estate. And eventually we'll even be giving this to Perm to limit our number of territories. That's when we reach a number of territories higher than we can, at the point where we get corruption. I don't want the corruption, so there's no point in getting this crappy province for us and taking corruption from it while it's in the state of Perm anyways. And then eventually we'll annex it when we'll have the states as Russia. So let's keep going. We wanted to go here, but Denmark took it. We followed it in order, but we just took money there. But then the hordes are going to fall off. One important thing when you fight Russia too is to take at least one province in the Tambov state. These three are the Tambov state. These two are held by Great Horde. Penza is held by Kazan. The reason is you'll want to state it too, and then convert it. And the reason is your states on the steppes starts when you at least convert one of the provinces in this. All this is with Third Rome, obviously. But then they fought each other, they just ruined themselves, so we were able to go there. As I said, the Stug went with the Perm. I pushed Novgorod here, that's one state. I go by state, especially with Russia. So we'll start annexing stuff, eventually we'll get Tech 8 and get extra states, and then these two will go. Here, it's important, if you can, to get a border on Uzbek as soon as possible, and then get the north stuff of Uzbek. The reason for that is that it's going to get your Siberian frontier much faster. If you just go by Perm, you can only those two, and then wait for one to finish to get there, and then wait one finish to get there, etc. It takes forever. If you get all of Uzbek core, by the time you can get your Siberian frontier, you can start with all these. And it's pretty much the only way to get to the Pacific, to get Relentless Push East. I already have the achievement, but if you're looking for that achievement, it's really important to get Sibir part of Uzbek out like this. And you have claims for this, so it's not that hard. Now we'll push, you'll see that the Ottomans takes this, which will limit our claims, which is annoying. Well, actually, Crimea is the end of the mission tree, so it's not exactly important. We're gonna get lucky on Timurids. Timurids was growing here, but then they'll blow up. And this is the weird part that's gonna happen. This. So what happened here is that here, now I didn't see that at the time, but I was able to see Timurids, and eventually I saw the Timurids carpet sieged by Ming. And by looking at the Timurids, the Sibir was used by Ming was tributary, to make sure the Timurids a tributary. The only way that Ming can get that CB is if they border the target. So I knew, even though I couldn't see here, that Ming was targeting the Timurids. So it's most likely here. They will manage to make the Timurids a tributary, but because they fought that war with no mandate, they lost their whole army, and then rebels spawned, and they never were able to deal with the rebels. And so they blew up. So both Timurids, because that will send them into a spiral of death, and then it blew up Ming. So that was the easy part of the run here. Now, I wasn't trying to make a super, as I said, like the Siberian frontier super fast here. I wasn't trying to make a super successful run here where we're just going for states and see if it's going to work. Good news is, if you're struggling with the economy, I'll show you the order of ideas and explain it at the end. But basically, states is the way to go. And the reason for this is that more states means you can grow faster before getting into corruption land. And at this rate, we reached it eventually in the mid-1600s because we were pushing super hard in Persia. But besides that, I never even got close to getting into corruption range. And then mixed with the idea groups that I took, and I think is the best if you want to deal with money. So if you want to make money, not just be able to pay your troops, but actually we're making 30-40 ducats a month extra, plus the force limit of Russia on offensive ideas. This is the way to go. The downside will be that you're not taking religious until mid-late game, meaning that you're going to have rebels to fight a lot, over and over, but you have troops, you have so much force limit that you can leave troops behind to deal with rebels. That's not a problem. Smolensk are vassals. I said that one exploded, so we Diplo vassalize these two. Diplo vassalize Riga too. Not here, but eventually it's going to blow up. Go back to this. Yeah, here this is going to stay here. It's going to change hands left and right, but we're not going to take this for a while. Eventually, Avaria will have all this. We'll Diplo vassalize it. Was more focused on pushing here. And then here, being Sunni close to the Ottomans, was always pushing the Ottomans into a coalition with the rest of the people I was pissing off. We took this here because Laponia, which is Kola, you start with Kola, but these aren't the same states, so we took this. And then we just finished the states here. This is in Russia, which is important for a mission. We're not going to take Finland for a very long time. not exactly important. Because the main thing too is we did push west because there's a good bunch of states here for taxes and production. But in terms of trade, you're better off pushing east because you're Novgorod, unless the other option, but that means fighting Denmark a lot more, it would be to take the Baltic Sea and then move your trade capital to the Baltic Sea. But then again, that's not all of this. Well, Kiev pushes to Novgorod, so there's a trade reason to go for Kiev, even though Kiev is not exactly a big one, but it's also going to limit the trade power of other nations in Crimea, which is important, not only because it's your money, but it's weakening the economy of the Ottomans. Now, when we started fighting the Ottomans, this is our vassal, Moldavia. Varia is our vassal too. The rest you can just look, but we're just pushing slowly. We're taking our claims, really. And I'm pushing hard on Samarkand. And then eventually on Lahore. I could have gone for India, but I decided not to, really. It's not necessary. We could have made more money there. But as you'll see, there will be a massive Delhi. And because there's not that many tags, it pushed the Ottoman close enough to get into a coalition with the Indians. So I didn't want to deal with a coalition because I was alone. All my Diplo slots were vassals. For a while I had friends, but then he kept calling me in stupid wars, so I decided to just go alone. We're gonna take this for Vladivostok. That's a mission. That's pretty much all we're gonna do here. Again, we're gonna Diplo vassalize a bunch of Chinese people, but they're not doing much for us. And yeah, beyond that, you can see the limits of our borders. Like the dark line is the limit of our borders, while the color is what we currently have at the state. So we're going to kick out Afghanistan soon, and then Shirvan, and then Ajam. I was moving around Persia, because Persia cannot go up. Persia only goes to Aleppo, which then goes to Constantinople, then goes to Ragusa. It never goes up, so it wasn't that important to me. While Samarkand does go up. And Samarkand is into Lahore, and then Lahore is the door to North India. Sadly, Gujarat doesn't go there. So we were collecting in Gujarat, so I figured eventually, why not? Was also taking all this, making it easier to fight the Ottomans. So we did go for Persia eventually, and then collect in Persia instead of Gujarat, and just push India into Persia, or into Samarkand, depending which node. That's the big thing about trade ideas, because for Russia, a lot of people say trade with Russia is weird, but it's not. Trade ideas is extremely strong if you're trading inland. I'll explain in a bit how it works for those who don't know, but basically, caravan power is a stand that you get from ideas, either national ideas or government reforms or idea groups or policies, and it's only useful inland. Also, if you trade inland, your total development is what matters for the power you get in the node, assuming you put a merchant there. So having trade ideas gives you extra merchant to trade inland more, and then because you have high development, being Russia, you're going to have a high base trade power there as soon as you put a merchant, and then your caravan power from trade ideas will multiply that. So again, we're just conquering for conquering right now. Nothing really important. I wanted to reach the 1700 at least to get the last idea, to get the age bonus for Russia, but beyond that it's irrelevant. So first of all, explain how we get the states. Well, I'll go for ideas first. So states, most of the states, as you know, are from technology, and then there's 5 in admin, and in expansion, and I'll explain the ideas in a second. And the big thing is that Russia in the last age gets 20 states. On top of Tsardom, gives another extra 5 states, and forming Russia makes you automatically an empire. So you have empire, it gives you 10 extra, so you have the 10 base, right? Plus the 10 from government, right, making an empire. Then you have the 5 from Stardom, the 5 from the reform down here, the 20 from the Russian Empire, and then fully admin, fully expansionist. One thing to note, you do not want to become revolutionary because this is only specifically for the Russian Empire. I've tried it in another run. If you go revolutionary, you don't have access to this. You actually lose it if you had taken it. So that's a small thing here. It says specifically Russian Empire for a reason. As a side note, it's the same thing for Germany. Prussia, if you form Germany with Prussia, while now you keep the Prussian monarchy, as I explained in the last video, you still don't have access to this because this is specifically for Russia, for Prussia. Anyway, so ideas, yeah. The big thing here is that first of all, getting admin ideas first gives us extra 5 states while we are still a duchy as Muscovy, which lets us expand faster before forming Muscovy, before forming Russia. On top of that, there's obviously core creation cost, which reduces our weight on admin, which lets us be on tech on admin a lot, and tax, well, not anymore because we're late in the game with all the manufactories and the coal. But for a long time, taxes is your main source of income. So being in production, this is what I'm looking for. Yeah, the production efficiency here is pretty big, and then you have the trade efficiency here. Trade is also pretty big as Russia, because especially if you take trade ideas. So. Order of ideas, admin first for what I just explained. The mercenaries will never use them, or Russia, like, this is without quantity ideas. But mainly it's for the states, to have more space to expand while being Muscovy. Because the other source will be Tech 8, which is only 3, and then by Tech 10 you're Russia. It's just to smooth out your early game. Also, you don't exactly need to deal with rebels that much early game because you're still small, so your armies are easy to move around even if you're at war. Then we take trade for the reason I explained. So, as I said, if you trade inland, trading inland means you're either putting a merchant in an inland node, or you are putting a merchant into a node that is not inland but is pulling inland, like Crimea by example, if we push to Kiev. It's important that an inland node is a node that doesn't have a single port. If it has a single port, then it's a coastal node, and coastal nodes will require ships to protect. But putting a merchant there is not going to give you power based on development. Where is it written? Just hold on. Oh, this, yeah, okay. So this is either ships for coastal nodes, or as you can see, for inland nodes, because Kiev is inland, you get a base trade power based on your 4,584 development, and then plus 25% because I have trade ideas. The last idea of trade ideas is fast negotiations, which is cavern power, which only multiplies in inland node. You don't even need to have land in the inland node, you need to put a merchant there. So if you put a merchant in an inland node, and that node is transferred towards land that you actually own, you're going to get the base value, then multiplied by trade ideas. So, trade ideas for Russia is important because Kiev is inland, Astrakhan is inland. Don't be confused by this. This is not, there's no ports in the Caspian Sea, therefore Astrakhan is inland, right? So Kiev, Astrakhan, Kazan, Siberia. And Siberia is important to put a merchant until you control over Samarkand, because if you don't put a merchant here, it divides half and half. So now I'm not doing it anymore, using the merchant somewhere else, because it goes to me one way or another. It doesn't matter if it goes to Kazan or Samarkand, but if for the early game until you have all of Samarkand, sorry for the hiccup, you will want to put a merchant here when you have your Siberian frontier, so that it all goes to Kazan. Kazan you'll have 100% no matter what, because it only pulls out one way and there's no one collecting here. Samarkand is inland, Lahore is inland, and then you have Doab, which is inland, and then Bengal will count as inland if you pull to Doab, because again, an inland node it's considered inland if the node itself is inland, or if it's a coastal node that you pull towards inland. So if you pull to Doab, Doab being inland, Bengal becomes inland for us. Lhasa as well, but whatever. Now, for a long time I was collecting these two, but I decided to stop because, well, I needed the merchants for Persia and I make more money here. If I don't put a merchant transferring here, same thing here, Basra is coastal, but if I pull to Persia, Persia being inland makes Basra inland. So that's why I have 48% here, even though I have one province, right? So this is the argument for trade. This is where a lot of your money will come, because the problem, if you don't have trade, Kiev will be pulled by other people, will be pulled down here. And again, it looks like we have a lot of power, but if we didn't have this, would only have our development to count, which would cost us about 15%? No, less than 10%. So for Kiev, it's not that important anymore, but the problem is, because someone else is putting a merchant in, there will be no default direction. For those who don't know, for the direct direction, the default direction, if no one is trading in the node, like here, actually put a merchant here. So this was a mistake. Siberia, I guess, yeah. If no one is trading whatsoever, it will cut on equal values based on the nodes that are pulling out, or if someone is trading there, but I'm talking about no one trading whatsoever in the node. But as soon as there's 1% putting a merchant there, then the default direction for anyone in that node will be the direction of that merchant. Trying to find an example of where I don't have a merchant, but I have power. Here, by example, I have 6%, but nothing's going up, right? If I put a merchant here, let's just show it to you. So let's take the guy in Kazan because he's irrelevant. Let's wait a month and a half. Let's wait the tick of the month. As you'll see, we put a lot of this in this. No, it's not that much. I want to see. Yeah, see, the merchant in Kazan was irrelevant because I'm the only one trading here and there's only one direction. If there was more than one direction, then it would cut in half, like Siberia does. Because I have a merchant here, well, I'm not the only merchant, and I'll explain that in a second, but if I was the only merchant, then the default direction of everything transferring out, like there's people collecting here by default because it's their capital, right? But these don't count because assuming there's no merchant, these wouldn't count for default direction. If I was the only merchant, I would have more money here, even with the same power, because then the default direction would be here. Now it's not the default direction. Well, it is now because I'm the top power. That's the thing. If there's more than one merchant, it's the nation with the most power that decides the default direction. So, just a tidbit here for trade. But as you can see, we gained 3.5 ducats just by putting a merchant here. Mainly because we changed the default direction, but also because we added that development value here plus the fast negotiators, because we have a merchant here and it's inland, right? So trade for Russia is super good because of all this inland stuff that will be affected by caravan power, which is based on your development and your Russia, so you have a lot of it, right? That's the crux of it. But also trade plus in the admin is another 20% trade efficiency. Right? Importation Act, trade efficiency. So you get this too, and then you get another 20% trade efficiency for free on top of it. Then we took defensive because, well, I like to take one of each at the start. And then defensive is pretty good for Russia, basically because we don't have much morale until our last idea, and it's only 5%. But on top of that, well, it's better generals overall. But the main thing is the nutrition. Nutrition is actually important for Russia because very often you'll end up being over your supply limit due to the fact that all this is crap, and then it's winter often. So often reduces the supply limit, but also puts a base attrition monthly. So yeah, and it's not only for your manpower, but it's also for exhaustion. So this is that. Also, defensive admin is corruption reduction, which gave us a little boost, because keep in mind when you start defensive, it's because you're tech 10, so you become Russia. At that point, the corruption is not that important, but by the time we finish defensive, because you have so many claims on the steps, it goes super fast. You're gonna want some corruption reduction, and then defensive admin is exactly that. The spy discovery, the first one. So spy detection is actually interesting because it reduces the power of other nations to spy on you. And when you're big, your big rivals tends to put this content, but it's gonna happen less often if you have spy discovery value. So without taking espionage, you get some by having defensive admin and then the corruption reduction. Keep in mind Russia also has this naturally, so there's that. But the defensive itself doesn't have to be defended. Also, defensive trade is I'm an extra merchant. So yeah, there's that too. And then expansion for the states mainly. But by this time, if you do the Sovereign Frontier properly, you'll be reaching this. And then what happens here is as soon as you finish Sovereign Frontier, you'll get an explorer by mission. I think it's the Emir Acquisition. Well, Siberia. So okay, when you finish Eastern Siberia, you kill Kamchandak and Chuk. I don't remember his name. The two guys here that keeps moving around. When you kill them and then you finish the Sovereign Frontier, you get an explorer here. So you just need to build 3 ships, and then you can explore the point is you get to explore this, and then you can start Alaska. Alaska itself is not exactly relevant. Like if you don't want to do it, it's not that important because you can't pull it to you. The only way to pull west is to pull to Japan or Indonesia, which you don't really have control over either way. But be on top of your job as the explorer while you have the explorer, because since you're not taking exploration idea, you're not going to be able to hire a new one after. So make sure you get as much as you can. So this is why we didn't finish this. But the important is North Pacific, coast and sea, so that you can start here. Especially if you're taking expansion to get the max states, but then you're going to have 2 colonists, so you might as well want to use them, right? But it's also an extra merchant and more trade power. Because as you can see, trade is... Okay, our production is super high because it's the last stage with all the coal, but if you ignore that, our production was half that like 20 years ago. So it was trade all along that ran our economy. So having expansion on top of trade is pretty big. Then we took religious ideas, because at this point we were having like 60-55 religious unity. We needed to deal with that, so we took religious ideas for that. Humanist would have worked too, but I took religious because Orthodox. And then after that is just the basic ones, so offensive, diplomatic, like offensive for the siege speed and the force limit. Diplomatic was the plan to get the province war score, but I'm not finishing the run. And then the last one would probably have been humanist, just to make sure that we don't have rebels whatsoever ever again. But yeah, that's the point. Like as you can see, this big, we still have 9 territories buffer, and it's actually more than that, because after 9 we would start to get corruption, but you can consider that we have the abolishment, I'm not going to pronounce that, this thing, and then we have the Spy Discovery Act, which is another 10, so that's 20 corruption reduction. So you can consider that you have an extra 10 territories, because 1 territory is 0.02 corruption. So we can add another 10 territory over the buff. So that would be 91, but then at that point we'd have the other states. So the max is 91 as Russia, which is the maximum. There's actually another maximum, another nation in Muscovy that could have 3 more. It would form Russia in the end, as it's Tsardom, and it's Chernigov, which you need to release from Lithuania, which is a much harder start than Russia, than Muscovy. So I didn't want to do that, I didn't feel like it. But the point is, Chernigov is a princedom. Because one thing is, to become a Tsardom, when you form Russia, you need to be a Russian principality. If you're not a Russian principality and you form Russia, you'll be a normal monarchy. And Tsardom is important for the state limit because it's 5 extra states, right? So, Muscovy doesn't have extra states, but Chernigov, which can be released by Lithuania, has an extra 3, but it's in the east of Lithuania, which is Russian. So, and because you're creating a new state, you can pick your first reform, and they have access to this because they are, well, it's Russian principality at that point because they are Russian. And then from there you form Russia the normal way. And the other interesting thing with Chernigov is all the Russian miners have interesting missions to form Russia. So there's that. But yeah, so if you did it with Chernigov, you would be at 94 limit. Now the thing is, the last 5 is at Tech 31, so at that point, whatever. But this one can be still interesting. You still have roughly 80 years left with this, so that's nice. But in total, it's 91, 94 with Chernigov, and then you can add another 10 for the corruption. Well, that's another thing though. You're not going to have this if you do it with Chernigov, because you're going to have Chernigov ideas. And Russia is the only one that has corruption in its national ideas. So, also you're not going to have this force limit, so the Ottomans might be a bit more tricky. Well, at this point it's irrelevant, but you get my point. Yeah, so this strategy, personally I played Russia like 20 times, maybe 10 times since Third Rome, and I think that's the most comfortable. And not having the Volt is not that actually important until here, and I never used it, because this is pretty much around the time you get Imperialism anyways. But you don't exactly need it, because you have permanent claims, so many permanent claims, that this Volt is not exactly that important. This Volt would not save you Diplo points if you focus on your claims, because you have claims anyways for conquest. It would reduce your aggressive expansion, but you don't exactly need it. You're Russia, so whatever you take, nobody cares. And then you have 10% reduction here, and you can, as I did for a long time, you can always run St. Nicholas for another 10% reduction and improve relation over time. So you can deal with your aggressive expansion like that. So while Religious Ideas is a good starter for Russia, this, in my book, in my experience, is a stronger start. Like, you can argue with defensive and all that, and even expansion, really. But I would start admin trade. Try it and tell me what you think. What's your experience about it? The point is, if you're going to go trade and focus on trade, you want to go east. You're going to go to Lithuania for Kiev, but as you can see, just to recap, you want Kiev and Crimea ASAP. But Krakow is not exactly that important. That's the Polish part. It's not the most important part because you can't pull it up. As you can see, I'm not touching it even though I have 44%. I could collect here for a lot of money though. I didn't do a perfect run, but yeah. But it's exactly, if I didn't do a perfect run, imagine the money we'd make. We're making 500 right now, but realistically, for this during the 1600 or whatnot, you'd be making about, like, comfortably 50 to 60. These are stacks, by the way, so it's not like we're chilling on cannons. That's my generic stack size until we get Tech 26. I just got Tech 26. Tech 26 is when you get 40. And then with the Russians, I'd probably do... I like to do 40 stacks, so maybe 22-0-18. Cannons are extremely important for Russia because, well, they have the strongest cannons besides Spain. And then they're cheap anyways. But then you also want infantry because of Strelskys. And then this is fire damage bonus, and cannons are fire, obviously. So you want to focus... I'm not doing it right now, but you want to focus on generals that have fire pips, and then you're just gonna melt by the 1600 or so when cannons are important, are strong. But the problem is a lot of cannons, if you don't have the money, it gets risky, and then most runs with Russia, you're like, I'm struggling with money, but like we were doing full force limit, and that's the thing, if you have a lot of states, you have a lot of force limit. We're easily around 200 without quantity ideas, without offensive ideas by the early 1600. And we're paying all of it. And still making 50-60 ducats a month. I might upload the whole run by episodes of 45 minutes. We'll see. I realize that I play so much, I have so much content that I can actually making just time lapses every 2-3 days. Is great already, and adding the full runs would be first overloading the channel or doing it slow enough, but then I'd be uploading the same run for 6 months before doing the other one, so I'd end up uploading runs in patches that are not relevant anymore. Like, by example, this run, if I do the whole episodes thing, we'll still have the Friends run to do. There's about 24 episodes of that. Even at 2 episodes a week, at 2 episodes a day, sorry, that's 12 episodes. That's 12 days. So that's roughly 2 weeks of Friends, and then 2 weeks of Russia. By that time, I'd have done 10 more runs. So we'll go with the time lapses, and then if I slow down, then maybe 1 or 2 runs will be put all together. The other option is I just set up a second channel and just straight up upload the whole run in one video for those who are interested. Let me know in the comments if that's something you would want. It saves me the editing time too, so there's that. But yeah, here we go. Didn't really go out of missions, and I could have done China. China exploded so early, I could have done that, so there's a lot that we could have done, but I was trying my hardest to stay within state limit to see how much land we could get without going, not state limit, but territory limit. And there you go. Have a good day, guys. Don't forget to follow on Twitch, subscribe here, drop a comment if you have anything to say, and have a good day. Next run will probably be Spain, but you'll see that in the channel soon enough. Bye bye.